It's your chance to leave now, Francesca. We're being recorded. If you want to jump off,
I'm sticking in.
You're sticking with us. And we're live on Facebook now too. So how are you, Francesca?
I'm so good, Julie. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh God, I'm so excited for this. We're going to have some fun. We're going to talk about a great book. I have though the old cover, and we were talking earlier in the green room. I love the new cover.
I'm so happy that you like it. As I say, who doesn't want a new outfit for spring, right? Something light, lavender. Lavender's the color of the season.
I've got a little lavender lipsticks here going on, Got you covered on the color.
Yeah, so, thank you.
So excited about that. Just going to fill a little bit of time to give Facebook enough time to notify everybody that we're here. Yeah. But if anybody misses anything, it is being recorded and it'll stay on Facebook. So we're all good. And you are joining us from New York City. Is that correct?
I am. Yes.
Yeah. So we are located, for people who don't know Warwicks, we are located in San Diego, the La Jolla area. So we've got the two coasts covered. So hopefully there's some people in between that are watching us today too. My little sign there says 1896, and we were talking in the green room about that too. Not quite as old as Harvard.
Not quite. That's a tough one. That's a tough one. That's ancient and decrepit, but this is august and impressive. 1896, 125 years.
So we're celebrating 125th anniversary this year. So while we're not the oldest bookstore in the country, we're the oldest continuously family-owned bookstore in the country.
Which is amazing. And so wonderful. And the community that you have fostered as a result of that is
it's incredible.
So powerful that it reached my East Coast ears when I was just a young book person, knowing, Warwicks in California, that's the coolest. So this is just an honor for me. And one of the, silver linings of this weird, difficult year that we've had, which is I, as a debut novelist, get to visit this fabulous California institution. So
we are thrilled to have you. And one of the things that we do pride ourselves in is bringing wonderful authors to our community. So thank you for coming. So we appreciate it very much. So yeah, I mean, and the things that we've all seen, Harvard's seen a little bit more, but 1896, it's like, we've lived through 2 pandemics now. So we have survived quite a bit. So there you go. Francesca and I are going to talk for 35, 40-ish minutes, something like that today. Amanda's in the background with us, monitoring Facebook. So if you have any questions for Francesca, go ahead and put those there, and Amanda will feed those into me. Sometimes I get distracted, so I'll try and look where those questions are coming in from. Also, she will be putting Ghosts of Harvard in the new paperback edition that just came out. We'll go into into the comment section as well. And while we love you to order that book from us, you can easily click on having us ship it to you. Any way there is to get a book, you can get it from Warwicks, or we'd love for you to come by the store and pick that book up, and maybe you'll find some other things there. So, with that, I need to do my due diligence and give the official introduction of you, Francesca, before we start our fun conversation. Francesca Serritella is the New York Times bestselling author of a 9-book series of essay collections co-written with her mother, bestselling author Lisa Scottolini, and based on Chick Wit, their Sunday column in the Philadelphia Inquirer. She graduated cum laude from Harvard University, where she won multiple awards for her fiction, including the Thomas T. Hoops Prize. And she is here today to talk to us about Ghosts of Harvard. Love it.
Thank you so much.
But before we get started, and I told you this in the green room, I don't know if your mom's watching or not, but I have to give her a shout out because I absolutely love your first name.
Oh, thank you.
It's my mother's middle name. I wanted to name my second daughter that. I got vetoed. So thrilled to be hosting a Francesca.
It was a bit of a tough name to grow into. My childhood nickname my whole life was Kiki. I don't even know what the origin story is. It was early, and then Francesca was like a little too much Italian, a little too much tomato sauce for my public high school in rural Pennsylvania. It was like Francisco, like San Francisco, and I was like, no, not like San Francisco, actually. Right. But I don't mean to throw shade on them. It was a wonderful place, but it was just a big name for a little girl. But now I've grown into it. I love it, and I come from a long line of Franks.
Okay.
So, like, you know, like we have some, like my grandfather, my uncle.
Okay.
So it's very dear to me that way. And
I love it. My older daughter was named after my father, who's a Sam. Her name is Samantha, so we called her Sam. I wanted Francesca because I wanted a Frankie, so I wanted a Sam and Frankie.
That's so cute. Yeah.
I got vetoed though, but I got a Marissa, so it's all good. So, and Lisa's here, so your mom's here, and she does say, "Love your name too," with lots of hugs and kisses.
She only had one. I'm an only child, so she had to go with her heart content with the name. Go for it. Bring back the old country, and we did.
I love it. I love that. Love that.
Thanks.
So we are here obviously to celebrate and to talk about Ghosts of Harvard. So for those that may be joining us that have not heard about it, can you tell us about what Ghosts of Harvard is about?
Absolutely. Ghosts of Harvard follows the story of Cadence Archer. Katie is really struggling in the aftermath of her beloved older brother's suicide. Her brother was a genius. He was just a prodigy and a mega talent his entire life. He just sailed through academics, made getting into Harvard look easy. It seemed like he was guaranteed the brightest future. But while he was a student at Harvard, sadly, he developed schizophrenia, struggled with it, and ultimately dies by suicide on campus. Katie is just completely lost after this has happened because in addition to him being really that bar by which she measured herself her entire life, her North Star, he was her best friend. And she had dreamed of trying to measure herself against him and join him at Harvard as a classmate. And now these terrible circumstances. But she is so haunted after his suicide of all of those what if questions that type of tragedy leaves behind of what did she miss and how could this have been prevented and how did his life take this unimaginable turn? And she knows the answers are only in one place, and that's on Harvard's campus. So much to her parents' heartbreak and even horror, she wants to go and piece together his final year to understand why he did what he did. And while she's there, armed only with an old notebook of his with some lab notes and possibly paranoid scribblings, she begins to unravel these mysteries of his final year and gets a lot more than she bargained for. And the most terrifyingly, she begins to hear voices herself. And then the new question is, am I losing my mind like my brother? Like, is this how it begins?
Right.
Or if she listens to these voices, could they be something different? Could they be ghosts? Will they lead her to that ghost she craves most and the answers about her brother? Or are they just leading her down a path of her own self-destruction? So that's the plot of Ghosts of Harvard. It's a real mix. It's a little bit of a psychological thriller. It has this historical, supernatural, spooky physics, even stuff going on in it. But I think of it at its heart, it's really a family story.
A family story. And I mean, you touch on so many things that are, as a parent and as people who are going to college, and I mean, the pressures of Harvard just in itself have to be, and you've experienced that personally.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that you took some of this from maybe your own experiences there. But was that kind of the catalyst of like, did you see people that were struggling with this when you were there at all? Oh, wait, we lost you. Uh-oh.
Are you there? Am I back? Oh, how strange.
Yeah.
Sorry, no idea.
Maybe there was a ghost. We might have had a ghost come in.
We don't know. There are multiple dimensions. There's the internet dimension. I have no idea how this works.
Yeah.
But anyway.
There might have been a ghost there.
Yes. So I never thought that I would write about Harvard while I was there. I was just trying to keep my head above water. But I do think you're right. That pressure made an impression, and Harvard is a character the moment you set foot on campus. And it really is. It's a place where you feel time close in on you, that enormous legacy of the past, founded in 1636. It predates our nation by over 100 years. Every single building is a memorial, a monument to some famous name, often a person who made their mark very young and died very young. And so it has all that weight of like, how do you live up to this? Oh, do you think you like poetry? Are you the next T.S. Eliot? Because he went here and he wrote The Wasteland by the time he was 22.
Yeah. So think again.
Right. And then on the flip side, you have this pressure, the future expectations on you, because at this point, with the selectivity rate as ridiculously low as it is, and it is a little bit ridiculous, and it's harder, it's gotten harder even in the 10 years, whatever, since I've graduated, probably more.
We won't tell anybody.
It's at the point where they could fill that freshman class 10 times over without the quality of the student. Every single public student there, school student there, graduate, I mean, was a valedictorian. Like, You are not impressive. And that really gets hammered home that you feel like the admissions mistake. Everybody feels like the admissions mistake.
And that's gotta weigh on your head a little bit.
Right.
I mean, that's
it
gotta
does.
be,
And you know you won the golden ticket if only you don't blow it. And so it's like, you like computer science? Are you the next Mark Zuckerberg? Because here we are on Facebook Live. And he invented it in his dorm.
Yeah.
So it's like this, it's just this, where how do I make good on this? How do I, and that duality of potential, it is undoubtedly a gift to go there. And you have that feeling of like, I'm at a turning point in my life, that I got this lucky break, that can I make myself deserve it? But at the same token, you're just a 19-year-old trying to figure yourself out, and it's like, just being normal. And so was Harvard always someplace in your, because I mean, my daughters, when they were growing up, it's like when we were trying, they were athletes and played sports. And at 15, we're like, where do you want to go? And they're like, I'm 15. I just want to like go out with my friends, Right.
But was Harvard always someplace that you had, that was the school?
I never thought I would get in. So,
but was it that dreams? But was it that your goal?
Probably was, in the sense I wasn't an athlete. I was always just a student. So it was like, trying to do the best that I could, trying to see if this was possible. I absolutely thought it was a lark. I thought I had a better chance of getting into other schools that I didn't get into, and I somehow got lucky. I mean, I really do think luck is a big part of it.
Right.
And then I got in. I had a really hard year my freshman year. I had a hard time with my freshman. I think everybody is so insecure and edgy and anxious, and it's a tough environment. But I thought, they are going to pry this diploma from my cold finger. I'm getting through it, whether this is Russian gymnast school or not. Like, I don't have to like it, because I just knew how grateful I was and humbled to be there.
So, just to be on that campus.
It took me at least 2 years to like feel like I belonged and I had friends and whatever.
Right. So the title that Harvard's in it, because I'm sure that it took you 10 years to write this?
Yeah, it did, honestly.
And so I'm sure over that time, were you always convinced you were going to use Harvard in the title and be about Harvard, or did you ever think that you were going to fictionalize the place?
I never thought I was going to fictionalize the place, because the place is already myth. Like, it is already fictionalized, even in the people while they are literally attending it. Like, it feels, you have this fictionalized, mythologized version that lives in your mind. And that the reality of it, the relevance of it is inextricable. And into our history, this book, I wanted to make the point about, we talk about time like it's this linear narrative with these little simple consequences, and that it could be all unpacked that way too. But the way we experience time is we carry our personal baggage, our personal histories, the stories that we tell about ourselves in a family. Oh, I'm the funny one. My brother's the smart one. Or I'm the, in her mind, she's the hard worker. Her brother's the genius. He's the gifted one, and she has like that. And then I think are also in our country. We have that on a national scale. We have the stories we tell ourselves about a place like Harvard, about what getting into a place like Harvard can protect you from. Right. I think, those students, just like every student, sadly, young people across this country are vulnerable to the same pressures and mental illnesses that, it doesn't discriminate. But it's so shocking when it comes to Harvard, because, well, if you get into Harvard, you're supposed to be bulletproof. Right. And you're just not.
And it's almost worse because of the pressures of Harvard versus just being a 19-year-old at a state college somewhere. You know what I mean? It's not to downplay anybody in college.
But I think young people feel it at all different types of colleges, because it's that time in your life where you have just enough knowledge to like think you know everything, but not enough to know of your own naivete. You're like, well, now that I'm a grown up, and everything feels so consequential. Like, the choices you make at college will determine your job and your spouse and your future. And it all feels like now is the time I'm writing my future. Right. And now, like, I'm 35 now. Now I know what a joke that is, right? You get a million do-overs, but you don't.
You don't know that. At 19, you don't know that. I mean, you just don't. And I mean, my husband and I met in college. So my daughter was like, oh, I'm supposed to meet my spouse in college. And it's like, and it didn't happen. It's like, no, you don't. Right. No, you don't need to meet your spouse. I mean, it's like, I think that happens less now than it used to, Yeah. We do have a question coming in from Sharon, because we're going to talk a little bit about, and so I will try and feed these in if they kind of timely go in with this, because I love the idea that you did the ghosts, and I love the physics part of it. And I'm very fascinated by all of that. She's asking, how did you decide on the time period that you wanted the ghosts to be from?
You know what? It was really, I started with the theme I was trying to get at, and the question, I don't think about writing a novel with a message like, oh, I'm going to impart to you my wisdom. I'm going to impart to you the questions that I'm still grappling with. And when I graduated from Harvard and I was grappling with my own, like, okay, now that happened. Now what?
Right.
How do I make use of this potential? How do I not feel crushed under this potential? What do I do with this? And so I felt that the essential wrench and of loss of a suicide is that they didn't get to live out their life's potential. Whatever you believe, whether it's God or fate or, it's like it has that unnatural, they didn't get to know. And they thought it was going to be potential for things to get worse, but it could have been potential for things to get better. And it's that loss of potential. And for those loved ones, the suicide survivors, which I think is such a poetic turn of phrase, that the term for the loved ones of somebody lost to suicide is suicide survivor. It's not the term for somebody who's attempted suicide. But I think it actually is very appropriate and apt because it's such an intimate, impactful type of grief.
Yeah.
And so for that person, the wrench is that they missed that turning point. So I tried to think of 3 different times in history where I both felt we had a different version of potential being either thwarted or destroyed or squandered. And also where for the main character, she would have this sort of hopefully cathartic psychological experience of getting, if she missed the turning point with her brother, in her estimation, she missed the turning point. She would meet 3 other people at their turning points and see if with the power of hindsight, she can help them. Of course, it's not as simple as just having the power of hindsight. I think this book challenges the idea that hindsight is 2020.
Oh, I love that too. Yes,
yeah,
for sure.
But
Because we all have our own version of the truth.
Right. So I was less focused on, what year it is or making sure they were all evenly spaced as I was this idea of potential thwarted. And that led me to think about times of war. 2 of the ghosts in different ways deal with times of war. One is a famous person who is a spoiler and you can try and guess while you read it. Another is a young man who's grappling with the legacy in his own family of becoming a soldier or not, because I think war steals an entire generation's potential.
Right. Oh, for sure.
Their trajectory,
right.
Takes away that agency in a different way. And then it also led me to think about racism and the way that racism has been a terrible, terrible thief of potential in this country since colonial times. And so that was actually one of the ghosts that really changed. I had written this book, like you said, almost, over a course of nearly a decade. And I always had this one ghost who was a Black woman and a mother, and it dealt with the potential of motherhood and all this different stuff. But the original character was from the 1880s. And it was like this weird type of maid they had that was sort of an exploited worker, like indentured servant maids that Harvard employed. And it was sort of about the false promise of Reconstruction. It was like totally different. But then I had sold the book to Random House. I had done a single editing pass. We were basically ready to polish and print. And Harvard went public with its history of slavery on campus. And then I was knocked back and I realized that as legitimate and interesting as the character was originally, if you're writing about an exploited worker,
right.
When there was a real history of an enslaved person, I was inadvertently kind of sugarcoating that,
right.
And burying this history that had been buried for 300 plus years.
Right.
But it required, that was from the 1760s. So I said time out. I completely rewrote that. I completely did new research with the Harvard archives. It was all very fresh, all very recently discovered. And very limited, honestly, and because that's how these were lost. Sadly, they kept better records of the kitchen inventory than they did of these people. But I just wanted to give that voice to that story.
And that I think is one of those things, because you do want, and that I think kudos to you for doing that and taking that step back. And even though it took longer to do, because you don't want to, like you said, discount or take away anything from somebody's own story.
Right.
In telling that. Yeah.
Right.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, the book is really about the way that this main character is making a narrative in her mind about what happened to her brother. And she's finding a lot of guilt in herself, but she doesn't know what she doesn't know. She doesn't know the power of it she's missing. And here I, as the author, had a living example where I didn't know what I didn't know. And I was telling the story not as forcefully and truly as I could. So that's why I had to change it.
Yeah. Wow. Fantastic. But that's the thing. Yeah. It's amazing. So but speaking of ghosts though, did you have any ghost experiences while you were in Harvard?
Not well, I mean, it's a spooky place. Like I said, it is a little bit of a macabre place sometimes. There are these morbid details. I mean, you know, the famous big library, the Widener Library is named for Harry Widener, who went down on the Titanic as a young man, and his mother bequeathed that entire library. But it says, you know, he died like, I think in his late 20s. If I say that there is a memorial, like, or any monument or plaque in this book, it is actually, you can find it on Harvard.
You can find it. Oh, I love that.
I did not fictionalize a single tombstone. And there really is like a colonial tombstone. I mean, a colonial cemetery across from Harvard Yard, right across the street. When I was there, it was like next to the CVS. It's so random, right in the middle of a modern little Cambridge. Right. But these, you know, these long eroded tombstones jut out like crooked teeth. And there really is one that commemorates a young man who died at 23 in the Charles River. I don't know how. And it says, under the epitaph is, "Young friends prepare for sudden death." And that's like right across from the freshman yard.
So when you're like coming home at night from the bar, you're walking by this like.
And you know what the visiting hours are for that cemetery? You can visit anytime, but not between dawn and dusk, or like, that's what it says. Like the visiting hours are between dawn and dusk.
Oh my God.
So yeah, it was asking for the haunted Harvard treatment.
Oh, for sure. I mean,
yes.
Without question. And talking about like how, you know, we talked about that it took you a while. Did you always think, or when did you think that it's like, I want to be a writer? Was that always something in Harvard, or was that? I
was so blessed to have this job demystified by my mother, Lisa Scottolini, and be able to watch her and watch the joy she took in it, you know, because I always say I was lucky to be born to a beginning author, not a best-selling one. I watched her change careers from being a lawyer to being a mystery writer, and then now this like big thriller career, but she built it brick by brick in front of me. I got to see that, you know, I think sometimes creative careers especially take on an aura of like something for other people. It seems a little hard to jump into, but I got to see that it was just perseverance, her butt in chair
and it's hard work. I mean, that's the thing that I think that some people don't realize, is that you got to see that it probably was not easy. I mean, that it was, and it was work.
Right. So it just seemed, you know, so fun. And I always joke that our dinner conversations were so interesting of, do you think you would die if you fell down the stairs, or would you have to be pushed? If somebody died falling down the stairs, would you know they were pushed? Like that was a conversation we had when I was in high school. It was great. And meanwhile, if you know my mom, she and I both are like the sunniest people. We were just always discussing murder methods.
I love it. I love that.
It was great. But, you know, I saw her joy, and I think I went through my own phase of wanting to be really different. I thought I wanted to be a psychologist, which I think you can see in this book. You know, I thought I wanted to be a psychology major. I thought I wanted to be a French history and literature major, which you can see in some of this book too. I ultimately was an English major, not a creative writing major. I wanted to be, because I'm a reader, and I knew that was the way I learned most. And I had these incredible professors at my fingertips there. So I was a proud English major, but writing was always the thing that felt like fun.
Okay, that was a fun thing, because that was one of the things that I was interested in, and I'm glad we got to, you brought up your mom, because I imagine eventually, like you said, you watched her build it, and eventually, but did you guys take like fabulous like research trips, and did you get to go and experience any of that with her at all? Yeah, we have over the years. I mean, my mom's always been really modeled like a great hands-on research style. So like I went on some of those trips even just to Philadelphia when she was writing her series, and like, you know, she always tells me. But it must have been fun to like watch her do that. You know?
It was fun. And, you know, then I did a lot of my own, many of my own Harvard research trips, because I wasn't paying attention with an author's eye when I was a student, you know, so I went back many times. And just this past summer, actually researching my next novel, which I don't want to say, can't give away too much about, but we did it has to do with perfume in part. And I'm a huge perfume lover. And my mom and I went to research in Grasse in France, where they make most of the world's perfume flowers and perfume production. And we had an incredible fun research trip. It's also like, so that was really great.
Yeah, so it's hard work, but there's some perks that you can kind of work in there a little bit, I think, as far as having the fun. Yeah. So let's see. I think Angela's asking, anything you would like to share about the design of the awesome cover of your book, because it is a great cover.
Sure, absolutely. What's actually on the cover is the spire of Memorial Church, which is this central church really in the heart of Harvard Yard, of the oldest part of Harvard's campus, although it is not the oldest structure on Harvard's campus. But this is Memorial Church. It was constructed to honor the those lost to World War I, and has now subsequently honored those in the wars afterwards. I have one of my favorite chapters in the entire book I set there, which is this scene where the main character, Katie, is with another student who plays the organ, and they're at midnight. And what is a fun fact about that, is really like the moment that I thought that this idea that I had rattling around in my head could actually be a real book, that maybe I should really go for it. You know, when I had that spidey tingle, I was meeting up with this old friend of mine. I love music. Music is when I feel really spiritual. This book has a lot of musical motifs. The main character, in addition to hearing voices, has perfect pitch. So I knew I wanted to do something with that in the organ. And I knew that students play it. So I got lunch with this classmate who used to perform it along with the choirs. And I was talking to him about, like, when did you rehearse? Because the Mem Church is open to the public so much. Like, and he was like, oh yeah, we rehearsed my rehearsal would typically be 11:45 to 12:30 in the a.m. And I was like, wait, you rehearsed at midnight in the church? And he was like, yes. And they requested that we didn't turn on any of the lights because they didn't want it to look open.
Oh
so
my God.
We rehearsed in darkness at midnight.
Oh my God.
And I was like,
wait,
are you serious? And I was like, oh my God, this haunted Harvard book is real. Like, this can count, like this. I just couldn't believe that was true.
You can't make that stuff up. I mean, you can, but it's like the fact that it really happened was like,
exactly.
That's even
he just
better.
said it like, oh, so nonchalant. Like, oh yeah, well, we all had tough schedules, and that was just when it was good, and that was when we could do it. So I was like, you've got to be kidding me. So I love that ended up on the cover, because it's a really special scene to me, and a really like a powerful memory of and it's a beautiful church.
Oh yeah, no, that is fantastic. So when in the writing of this, and you wrote with your mom over the years,
right.
So what is your writing process? Do you write, because it is a job, is this your job now? I mean, so is this like your mom, she sits down and gets the writing done? Is that the same with you? It's like you're writing all day kind of thing?
It is. I'm writing all day. I'm mostly sitting here all day. We're at my desk. This is where I typically am. And something I learned from her that has been so effective, probably more for my mental health maybe than my writing, is that I work with word count goals.
Okay,
so
there you go.
Depending where I am on a project, I mean, that's kind of, it's easier thing in first draft mode than it is in editing. But, and you know what? That's what I always say that as just a way to encourage anybody out there who's interested in writing or wants to write even a short story, something like, to do whatever you can to make your progress empirical rather than personal. Because if we only wrote when we felt like we were great writers or felt like we were crushing it, no author, your favorite author, the most best-selling author, would not get anything done. I could speak to that honestly. Like, I've had a lot of rough days, but when you can just ask yourself, did I hit my word count goal? Whether it be 1,000 words, 500 words, 100 words a day. That's an easier question to ask.
Right, because you can get
Then just, am I a good writer today? Then you're never going to get any sleep.
And was it hard for you to switch between the two, like writing your novel and then writing the essays and things, or did you find it was kind of like a nice break?
Yeah, it wasn't. I felt like they fed, it wasn't hard. I felt like they fed each other in a really good way, even though they're so on the surface so different. These essay collections we wrote are humorous. They were basically me making fun of myself for a living, which was a pretty great gig, us goofing about our family, goofing about my life in the city. But what it really was still, again, was about family, forming identity, what influences the way we build ourselves and build our lives. And that's so, in just a different way, in a more layered way, what I put into Ghosts of Harvard, I think is very similar. And I think every writer will probably tell you that, or at least it's not my insight, like, what's the expression? If I had more time, I would have made it shorter. Yeah. always trying to winnow down and get
Right.
to the
that best thing or whatever. Yeah.
Right. So column writing, especially in newspaper, was a really great exercise of packing a punch into the smallest number of words. And
Right.
I really tried to do that, even though I had plenty of room and this is like a nice, big, thick.
I love those nice big things.
It is. I promise I didn't waste your time.
Right. Well, that's the thing. No, it is, because it's like, because the writing is, even though it's a long book, it's condensed. It's the sentences, all the sentences matter. I mean, that's the thing that you strive for, you know.
Yes.
We were hosting an author the other day, and she just said, I just want to make the writing the best that it can be, you know, whatever my ability is.
It was once almost 100 pages longer. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard because it's like there's I mean, you're tackling a lot of subjects, and I mean, you're tackling a lot of things. You did it really well, but it's just like there's a lot to unpack on this. In you know, there's the characters and there's the mental, I mean, there's a lot in this, but it's done so well.
Oh, thank you. That's so kind of you. I always like tried to visualize it like I wanted the reader to be stepping into like a diorama or a proscenium stage, and that you could be looking at anything. I'm going to keep your eyes on what you really need to be seeing, but you can look around and explore in this book and feel the layers and whatever speaks to you the most. You know, we were talking before the event started that another silver lining, in addition to getting to travel to California, is that this past year I've been Zooming with book clubs. And I've been doing it a ton since last summer. And there's a request on my website. If you think your book club might be interested in this, we can work it out. We do a little Zoom book club. And it's been so fascinating and humbling and touching to see like different readers connecting to different threads of this story, whether they love the history part or they love even the spirituality, or they love, you know, whatever. It's just been really wonderful to see. And I think this book has a lot of room for a lot of different types.
It does, definitely. And that's Mohsen Hamid, who we hosted quite a few years ago, but he equated the reader in filmmaking. There's a job called the focus puller, and they're the ones that tell the director, like, you know, what to focus on. And he goes, that's what a reader is. A reader decides what to focus on and who the important. That's what's so fun about book clubs and about books like this too, is that you get to decide who's your favorite. You know, you're your own focus puller.
Right.
Yeah, it's really fun. It's really, and this does have the room to do that. So I know, so you talked about last year, that had to have been nice having those book clubs to go to, because were you kind of last year, kind of like with everybody else, it was hard to read, it was hard to focus, it was hard to do a lot of things. Same for you?
Yes, it was. I mean, look, it was just a terrifying year, books aside, right? Like it was a terrifying, really disorienting year.
Right.
And thank God for books. This book was a lifesaver to my heart, I think. It just gave me something to focus on and to connect with people over, and a wonderful reason to get great at this type of technology. I ended up, you know, Zooming with my four best friends every Thursday night to stay sane. You know, I live alone, so I was lonely.
Were you, so did you stay, I was going to say, did you stay in the city most of the time?
I was a little bit back and forth in a very responsible big chunk kind of way. So I was like here for a chunk, then I was at my mother's house in Pennsylvania for a chunk. Then I was back here for another. Because the
city had to have been crazy. I mean, that had to have been a very, just like, talk about a scary and spooky experience, you know, not ghost, but I mean, it had to have been a very off-putting in the city with something so vibrant as New York to go into this like shut down, quiet.
I remember, and I went home thinking I'd be going to my mom's house for 2 weeks, and I stayed there for, you know, the first 6 months. So yeah, it was really, really weird, and weird to have this big life event of my debut novel being published from my childhood bedroom with my Breyer horses. Right.
I love that your mom still has your Breyer. I love your mom still has your Breyer horses there.
But you know, but on a more serious note, you know, I think it one, any disappointment that I had about, you know, this year being the book and when bookstores were closed at the time, was very much put into perspective. That is a tiny, tiny heartbreak in a time of great heartbreak. And it was really, like I said, the book was just a great connector that I had, especially like through these book clubs where, you know, this is a year of a lot of grief. This is a book that grapples with grief. This is a year where we were thrown into asking, you know, where it was the type of event, this pandemic, that spawns that alternate reality where you go, the parallel universe of, if this weren't the pandemic, I would be doing this, and this would be happening, and that really was my main pointer, and I hoped insight about loss in general, and loss for this main character, where when her brother dies, every next thing is, well, if I would be going to Harvard with him, he would be showing me around here.
And there were so many people that were going through that.
Like that loss and those types of turning points in our events. There are some types of events which are in our lives, which are so important and changing and, heart-rending, and it puts it back in a different place. And you just always will have those two concurrent, you have to make peace with those alternate realities. And this year really brought that home. So it was great to have this thing to talk about that really, frankly, let me process this year too.
Right. Well, and there's a grace to that, in that you embrace it with a grace that it's like, we're here. There's so much tragedy, but I still have this great thing that's happening, even though it's different than I thought it might be,
Right.
Yeah. Which is, now I'm going to take it to something fun though. And I'm sure that you did this. Was there anything did you do a lot of online shopping during this pandemic like the rest of us did? I always love to ask, what was either the best or the worst thing that you bought during this?
I'll show you. And this is going to look like drugs. This is not drugs. But here's what I tell you. I did not do any online shopping for my usual vices like clothing, because A, I was not going anywhere, and B, I gained about 15 pounds. So I was like, no thanks in the clothes.
Right.
But again, this next book is sort of deals with perfume, and I have always loved perfume. And then I learned about Lucky Scent, a perfume shop in California, which will send you samples. This is a sample for perfume. Again, not drugs.
Not drugs.
Like,
we need to maybe type that into the comments.
Right. You can buy perfume samples, and this is my latest haul. And it's so fascinating to me, and I'm just addicted to, and I'm because I'm practicing about writing them anyway. I'm written a huge directory of them, and I have literally 100 of these, and they're organized by olfactory note and white flowers or rose base scents or woody base or amber. It's so
I love
fun.
So it's it was a new fun obsession to get.
Yeah, right. And they're $4 or $2 each. So just enough that you feel like you're not spending money, but when you buy 20 of them, you're a complete idiot. So yeah.
But when perfume costs $200 a bottle, it's spending
more is smell it before I test it, because I used to just be that person who would hang out at the Barney's perfume counter, Barney's rest in peace, and just make friends with all the staff because I was going to be there for a while.
It's
but now I learned the way to do it remotely, and it's a total blast.
I love that. I always love the online, what did people do online during COVID?
Yes.
And so your reading experience and the debut experience, we have somebody asking, and I always love to do this too, and I hate to put you on the spot because sometimes what I usually do is I forget. Who have you read over the last year, or what author do you want to lift up, or book that you've read over, what are you reading now?
I've read some great stuff. One of my all-time faves, Lily King, she came out with her other book, The Writers and Friends.
So great. Was that great? Oh my God.
Loved that. Love her. Everything. My hair guru, my writing hero. She's terrific. And another person who I think packs so much punch into her prose.
Oh, amazing.
I really enjoyed another great debut novel by Susie Yang called White Ivy.
Oh, right. Yes.
Really interesting. Really a slick thriller, but unusual. Not. You haven't read it before, and from a different.
And I think didn't they say that she took it sort of on the Wuthering Heights sort of? I think it was based loosely. You know what I mean? How some people base stuff on that. That was one of the things.
I actually read Wuthering Heights over the pandemic for the first time ever. I'm a big Gothic fiction fan, and that was this one of the greatest hits that I had missed.
Yeah, so good. I mean, although there was somebody, it's Kathy, why Heathcliff?
Yeah, no, I mean, they're a mess. That book is they need therapy. That book is just what if really traumatized people never had any therapy and they fell in love?
Right.
It's interesting, but it's not something to model.
No, Kathy, no, why Heathcliff? Why?
Right. And more recent stuff that's come out. I really enjoyed Chris Bojalian's The Hour of the Witch.
It was good.
Different and unusual and so well done. And and of course, I'm so proud of my mom's Lisa Scanlon, Eternal, you know.
Eternal. My mother cannot stop talking
Oh, I'm
about that
so
book. I love that. In fact, somebody asked if you went on, did you we already talked about going on research, but was there a little Italy research
You
that you went
know,
on?
this is my face because I studied Italian at Harvard. I'm fluent in Italian. I can speak it. And she went with her assistant to Italy.
Okay, Lisa, if you're still on here,
I
you
didn't
owe
go-
Francesca a
Where
trip
was
to
the
Italy.
drama trip for me, right? I don't know. I was the consultant on the language stuff, but apparently not good. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, no, I know.
There was some good reason why.
But
Not that good a reason.
yeah, but it's like, I'm thinking there might be a trip in the future
Right,
that
exactly.
needs to come on that one. And then Amanda's asking too, we're going back to the Perfume. Did you ever read the book by Patrick Susskind, Perfume?
Yes.
Oh, was that
I did.
like, I love it. That's the most twisted book you'll ever read, but I love that book.
It's totally.
Yeah.
It's great. It's interesting. And it deals with a lot of, even though my book approaches it in a completely different way,
Right.
that is such an interesting, I think the way that fragrance and scent is simultaneously so sophisticated and even cosmetic, but then also this primal thing,
Right.
where, you know, what my book is the most interested in is the way that our bodies know things that our mind can't articulate, that
Right.
words can't articulate, the way that we're constantly exchanging information with our bodies without words. And, you know, this has been this year of where technology is wonderful. I'm not anti-tech. Look at this.
Right.
This is so cool and great.
Right.
Love it. But what are we missing when we're missing the smell test?
Oh, and what scent, I mean, the fascinating thing about Perfume is like, what if you had no scent and what that does? I mean, that is just like, that concept is just crazy. But what scents can do for your memory. I mean, it's just like, you can smell, like I can smell my mom's perfume. It's like, you're right there. You're
right.
like,
Well, what's so fascinating is that's literally about the construction of the brain. Like it's in this limbic brain, the oldest part of our brain, where, but it's right, like the olfactory perception is right next to memory, trauma, emotion, really like fear and lust and like these really animalistic emotions, but as well as more sophisticated emotions. But it's interesting because, you know, the visual stuff's all at the front.
Yeah, super interesting. I mean, we're gonna need to close down. We've taken up enough of your time. In closing a little bit though, let's bring it back to Ghosts of Harvard. What do you want people to take away from reading this? Is there something that you want your readers to as a takeaway?
Yeah, there's a couple things I think. I think one is to really recognize the power that the stories we tell about ourselves, about our families, about our country really matter. They shape our identity, they shape our choices. The way we understand the past has so much influence on how we understand our present and what we're going to do in the future, that it's so important to challenge, you know, we're in this moment, we're seeing us challenge some national narratives, but I even mean on a personal level, you know, that like there are certain roles we take on in a family that can be this helpful emotional scaffolding while you're growing up, or it can be a really confining, burden, restrictive, even damaging things. You know, her brother had schizophrenia and she fears she might have it too, but the book also asks, don't we all have intrusive thoughts and, you know, thoughts we can't always trust and beliefs maybe that need to be challenged? So it's, you know, this is the power of stories and these personal narratives. And also, I think the real final message of the book in a way is that we have to, as much as we want to make sense of our lives and our loved ones and their choices, we have to make peace with the fact that we love people who we cannot control. And that's terrifying and difficult, but also we get to love people we cannot control. We get to be loved by people who we cannot control. And that relinquishment of our power is scary, but it's such a blessing. It's a state of grace, and it's what makes it so special, even as it's very difficult to accept sometimes when things go where we don't want them to go.
Right. Oh, so well put. So wonderful. Francesca, this was absolutely delightful. I enjoyed so much meeting you. I hope that everybody buys your book and shares it with their book clubs. And so people, your website is what?
My website is just my name, francescaserritella.com. Okay. And you can see there's all this wonderful book club material. Actually, the paperback has book club material that I wrote in the back, which so it has discussion questions. It has, you know, the links and everything, like information. You need to find that stuff on my website. My website is additional food recipes and the music of the Ghosts of Harvard.
Oh, I love. So you did a playlist for it?
Yes, because like I said,
fun.
music really is a feature, and the audiobook of this book's wild and great. And yeah, so it's like, it just is a whole immersive experience. And there is also this request for a book club visit, again, virtually,
right?
Which we can talk about and figure out. And it's just been a huge honor of mine to get to meet readers more intimately. I am only as introverted as one can be and not like hate this job. Otherwise, I am a people person, and I really identify with that storyteller quality. And I've just been so humbled by also the number of readers who have been touched by either mental illness struggles or the loss of suicide in their families. And those readers were the ones that I was thinking of the most when I was writing this book. There was no higher goal to me than that those readers would feel respected and seen and empathized with. And to get emails or messages or these book clubs and have them tell me that they felt it was cathartic or released any feelings of guilt or things like that, that just, my life is made. Like that's done. Like that's all I needed.
I hope for your next book that we're not in a pandemic and that you get to actually go to bookstores and readers get to sit with you and experience you in the room, because they're really, I mean, your mom has experienced it. I wish that for you as well, because there is something so magical about being in the room with readers.
I feel it, but it feels magical even on Facebook. So keep in touch, everybody. Find me. I'm just F Serritella on most places. So
love it. I love it. So again, the book, you can order it from Warwicks. We have that for you. Obviously we want people to buy books from Warwicks, because wonderful. We're bringing you wonderful things, but support independent bookstores.
Look at these events. These events are from places like Warwicks, who have been fostering community for 125 years, everybody. So it's like, if you want that to keep, if you liking these events and enjoying these events, we have to support these wonderful bookstores that put them on.
It. I'm going to say goodnight we're going to turn off Facebook and say goodnight to everybody. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thanks.
And love this. So great meeting you, Francesca.
Bye.
Bye-bye.